Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I am Gail Leone. I'm a member of the class of 1971, and I'm a trustee of the University of Rochester. I'm also the co-chair of the new Women's Network, which we will be launching this fall. Our mission is simply to connect, to support, and to engage you of our women. And I can't think of a better year than 2020 to harness and celebrate the rich traditions and contributions of women around the globe who are part of the University of Rochester family, including our alumni, our parents, and our friends. The Women's Network seeks to build on the momentum of the milestones in 2020, including Susan B. Anthony's 200th birthday and the centennial of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which we are commemorating today with this event. You'll hear more about the global network as we work to establish it in the months ahead. It is being built on the creativity and enthusiasm and grassroots efforts of our existing regional women networks, where we have them in New York, in Washington, D.C., San Francisco, Los Angeles, and soon to be in Boston. I want to thank all of the leaders of our Women's Network for their inspiration and co-hosting this lecture with the Alumni Board. Today's lecture is part of the series called Experience Rochester that exemplifies the university's commitment to lifelong learning. We have a wide range of registrants joining us for this session today. We're very exciting. Almost 500 people have registered, and they go from alum as far back as the class of 1946 and including members of the class of 2024. Before today's webinar begins, I'd like to just mention a few things on Zoom so that this might be helpful. If you'd like to ask a question, we will be taking those at the end of the session. Autumn will answer questions at the end of the presentation, and you can use the Q&A function, which you'll find at the bottom of the Zoom image. And if you'd like to view this session with closed captions, if that would be helpful, there's a button on the far right bottom that says closed captions or CC on the bottom of the toolbar, and just hit that and then turn on subtitles. And if you're having any trouble viewing the webinar, you can also call in and listen to the phone number that was included in your confirmation email. Now I'd like to introduce our speakers. We are just thrilled to have Autumn Haig, who's the Assistant Director of Rare Books and Special Collections and Preservation at the University of Rochester, where she serves as the curator for the Susan B. Anthony Papers and other women's suffrage collections. Autumn, we're thrilled to have you. Thank you. And Eleanor Leno, who's today's moderator, is a senior, class of 2021, a double major in history and Japanese with a concentration in women's history, very appropriate for today. Over her last 3 years at the University of Rochester, she's volunteered at the Susan B. Anthony Museum and House as a docent, conducted research with history department professors, and studied abroad in Tokyo. In addition to her senior honors thesis, she is currently working on an oral history project titled Tales of Andover's Second Wave Feminist Movement, which will be launching online this month. I can't wait to hear it since I am in the second wave of movement. Thank you again for joining us. And now I'm going to turn the program over to Autumn. Autumn?
Thank you so much, Gail. I'm going to share my screen. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm really thrilled to be here and to be talking about the suffrage collections that we have here in the Department of Rare Books, Special Collections, and Preservation at the University of Rochester. As you can see, the title of my talk is We Want More and We Will Have It, Women Running Rochester. And a little bit later in the presentation, I'll be talking about where that quote comes from and why we decided to use it. So one thing that I tried to do with this presentation was to show an image from our wonderful suffrage collections on every slide. So this slide just has my contact information, but I did want to share the Uncle Sam's Suffragee card that we have, which was part of a series of suffragette cards produced in the early 1900s, and just one example of some of the humorous material that we have related to the suffrage movement. So a little bit about our department. You can tell a little bit about us from our name. We have tens of thousands of rare books dating from the very early days of the printed book up until this year. We have manuscript collections. These are collections of unpublished materials, so things like letters, photographs, autograph books, things that haven't been published. We have the university archives from the University of Rochester, so anything related to student life, to administration, to different departments and groups on campus. We work on a variety of digital projects, which are available on our website. Some of these are digitized photos or letters. Some of them are more like exhibits. We have physical exhibits, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the exhibit on women in Rochester that we had been hoping was going to open in this March, and which didn't quite get off the ground, but I'll be sharing a little bit more information about the digital version of that, which will be coming out. And then we do a lot of instruction in the department as well. So we work with undergraduate and graduate classes here at the University of Rochester. We work with surrounding public schools, students who are working on History Day projects or other capstone projects related to material that we have in our collections. So we have a variety of different kinds of material, and then we keep busy sharing it with people in as many ways as we can. So I want to talk a little bit about how over time we have built our suffrage collections. So there's a few different ways that we have come into having such wonderful collections here. The first is I just have to thank Susan B. Anthony's family for deciding to move to Rochester in the 1840s. That was a really huge help because with the Anthony family here and Susan B. Anthony spending a lot of time in Rochester and eventually making it her home, she had connections with and corresponded with a lot of individuals and families in the Rochester area. And that meant that there were people living here in Rochester who had letters and other material related to Susan B. Anthony that they donated to the University of Rochester. So thank you to the Anthony family. And I need to acknowledge past curators and librarians and archivists here at the University of Rochester. We have been collecting this kind of material for a long time, and it takes a lot of work to build these. It's not a fast thing. You can't decide that you want to collect Susan B. Anthony and then the next day have a wonderful collection. It's something that happens over time. And so just want to acknowledge the work that has been done by colleagues in the past. Our department has a collection development policy, and that has helped us build our collections as well. The women's suffrage movement was an international movement. It happened in all 50 states. And so when you're building collections, you have to kind of know what you're going to collect, but also know what you don't want to collect. And so this collection development policy has really guided us in terms of helping us determine what we should be focusing on, maybe where some gaps in our collections are that we want to fill. So one example I'll just say is that a lot of our focus is on women in City of Rochester and the surrounding counties. So kind of that area in between Buffalo and Syracuse. We generally try to leave material from Buffalo and Syracuse to institutions in those cities. But we took a look at have been taking a look at our collections and decided that we wanted to go a little bit further afoot. And so we've started to look for material related to, and this is just an example, but Shirley Chisholm, the first African-American woman to be on the ticket, or to be running to be on the ticket for the Democratic Party for president in 1972. She's been in the news a lot the last couple of days, but we took a look at our collections and we thought, okay, she is an important enough figure that even though she's not from Rochester, we want to start to have some material about her in our collections. We work with dealers, some of whom, we have longstanding relationships with. They know the kinds of material that we are looking for. We work with faculty, graduate students, and undergraduate students. It's important to us that we have material that's used by people. And so we really enjoy talking to faculty members about what their current research projects are and how we might be able to support that in terms of building a collection. And then I also want to acknowledge that we have had many, many donors over the years who have really helped us build our suffrage collections, either through donation of funds or through material that has been added to the collections. So that's a really huge part of building suffrage collections as well. So what are suffrage collections? The image that you're looking at here on the left-hand side of the screen are the handwritten notes of the Rochester Women's Rights Convention, which was held just 2 weeks after the more famous convention in Seneca Falls. Basically, a lot of the women who were in Seneca Falls for that Women's Rights Convention decided that they had more work to do. And so they were going to come up to Rochester and hold another meeting and discuss women's rights again and in more detail. So we have the handwritten notes in our collections here. So that's an example of something that's very clearly related to suffrage. It's definitely a suffrage collection. And so there's three things that we sort of think of when we think of suffrage collections. So just like the suffrage movement itself, some women were very, very focused on the vote and women's right to vote. So we have a lot of material related to that. There were other women in the movement who were interested in women's rights a little bit more broadly. So yes, about voting and voting rights, but also about property laws, about divorce laws, women in religion. And so we also try to collect material that's related to that work and those topics. And then, the women in the suffrage movement, from Susan B. Anthony down to, women who were more kind of day-to-day, local, less famous. In addition to the work that they did, they also had personal lives. They corresponded with family members. They took vacations. And so we like to document that part of their lives as well. So I just want to mention specifically a few of the suffrage collections that we have. We have a Susan B. Anthony collection, and this contains material from a variety of sources. There are letters, there are photographs, there's 3D material, including some buttons that Susan B. Anthony had sewed fabric over, a tea set that she had been given. So not just things that you can read or things that you can look at, but also physical objects from her life. We have a collection called the Emma Sweet collection. Emma Sweet was a distant cousin of Susan B. Anthony's, and she lived here in Rochester. And she served as sort of an unofficial secretary to Susan B. Anthony. She corresponded a lot with her on her behalf. And so we have those papers as well. One collection that you may have heard of in the past is the Isabella Beecher Hooker collection. This is the collection that came to us, I want to say about 4 years ago, and it's the collection that had been discovered in the barn in Connecticut. And so Isabella Beecher Hooker was a Connecticut suffrage activist, but she corresponded greatly with Susan B. Anthony, with Elizabeth Cady Stanton, with members of her famous Beecher family. And so that is one of our largest suffrage collections. And then a Rochester collection, the papers of Isaac and Amy Post. Those records are fascinating because Amy Post in particular was friendly with Susan B. Anthony, was in favor of women's rights. On that last slide, we believe she's the woman who was taking those handwritten notes at the Rochester Women's Rights Convention, but she was also interested in a lot of other sort of social activist ideas for her time period. So she was close friends with Frederick Douglass and very interested in the abolition movement, did work with social justice and Native Americans, was involved in the spiritualist movement. So a lot of their collection is interesting because they were involved in a lot of different activities. Then we have a women's suffrage collection, which is a lot of records from what ended up becoming the League of Women Voters for the Rochester area. We have records of the suffrage movement in the Unitarian church papers, which you might not expect, except that Emma Sweet was a big supporter of the Unitarian church, a member of the church, and so she had donated a lot of her correspondence with Susan B. Anthony to the church. And then last, the Women's Rights Ephemera Collection. And this is where we put things like stamps or the Susan B. Anthony coin, sort of modern day representations of Susan B. Anthony. If you look, you know, at the gift store at the Susan B. Anthony house, or if you look on eBay, anywhere online, you can find t-shirts and mugs and hats, and you can find just about anything with Susan B. Anthony's face on it or a quote from her. And so we try to selectively collect things like that, just to show how important she still is to a modern audience. So we have published material. So these are things that you know, have been written, have been sent to the press, usually have been edited. Some of them were published in Rochester, some further abroad. So Susan B. Anthony wrote a lot of books, and also a lot of books have been written about her, and we collect those. We collect histories of the suffrage movement. And then I think my favorite out of all of these are the children's books that we collect. So one of my colleagues is the curator for our really wonderful collection of children's literature. And so in that collection, we try to add books, modern books and older books that show either about women who were in the suffrage movement. Sometimes, you know, for example, a book maybe where the child's mother was in the suffrage movement or was out protesting or picketing. So we try to capture a variety of representations of that movement, including in children's literature. And then just to take a step back, we have these wonderful collections. We have many different women and women's movements represented in our collections. How might you find them if you were interested in learning more? So there's a couple of things that you can do. You can look in the library catalog that we have under subject headings, or you could just type in a word that you were interested in or the name of a woman you were interested in. You can look through our manuscript collection, search our website. You can browse our digital exhibits and projects. When we reopen as a department, we love having researchers. We're open to the public. And so our reopening is going to be a little different this fall, but generally speaking, we are open to the public, and we encourage people to come in and browse or do serious research. Really just, we encourage curiosity. We love seeing people who just have sort of an idea of something they might be interested in, and they enjoy doing the research. And then we always welcome phone calls or emails, either to myself, to anyone in the department. We have a very strong service orientation in the department. We really love talking with researchers. So I will just say, you know, if anything in the presentation today or any of the questions that we have pique your interest, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We really love hearing from researchers. The photo on this slide is an example of something that you might need to talk to somebody about in order to find. So it's a beautiful photograph of a woman named Lucille Marks. It's from 1931. She is an employee at Kodak, and her desk has been decorated by her coworkers. She is getting married and she's leaving work. So they are giving her kind of a bridal shower at work. And so if you looked at the finding aid, which is like the inventory to our Kodak papers, and you did a search for her name, or you searched for bridal party, or you searched for wedding, you probably wouldn't find this picture. And so you would kind of need to know where in the collection you might want to look for photographs of employees. And that's where, you know, the librarians and the archivists in the department have experience with the collections and might be able to help you find an image like this. So as I start to wrap up, I just want to go back to the title of my talk. We had an exhibit planned to open in mid-March, celebrating the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, celebrating Susan B. Anthony's 200th birthday, and then also celebrating all of the amazing women in Rochester that have really led Rochester to be the city that it is today. And so we used this quote from Sojourner Truth as the title of the exhibit. And then the graphic is from a board game in our collection called What Shall I Be, which is a board game all about helping girls playing the game figure out which career they might be interested in. And so the exhibit covered a number of topics. It started with the 19th Amendment, but what we always talk about here is that, you know, the 19th Amendment is great and it should be celebrated, but it did not guarantee voting rights to every woman across the country. And so we like to acknowledge that. And then we really wanted to acknowledge a lot of the work that's been done since 1920 in Rochester. So we do talk about Susan B. Anthony and the posts and a lot of those other 19th century activists, but we focus the exhibit a little bit more on the 20th century into the 21st century and work that has been done. So you can see the topics that we covered here, a pretty wide range. And so that's because once women, even before women had the vote, and then especially after they had it, really threw themselves into civic life. And so there's a lot of women here in Rochester who have thrown themselves into these activities and been leaders in it. We called out 4 women specifically as part of the exhibit. And again, the women are very, very important, and it was a thrill to be able to share material about them. So Susan B. Anthony, who I think everyone knows, Midge Costanza, who was the first woman elected to Rochester City Council, Ruth Scott, and then Louise Slaughters, whose papers you may have heard about last week in the talk, and who's a relatively recent addition to our collections. We also covered the board game. We had a whole section with individual items where we told a little story about them, things like suffrage cookbooks, which are really interesting to look at. And then in honor of the opening of the exhibit, we were able, through a very generous donation from the Friends of the University of Rochester Libraries, acquire a first edition of Mary Wollstonecraft's A Vindication of the Rights of Women. And so that was going to be on display in the exhibit as well. And then here I just want to show, you know, a lot of our suffrage collections have material from the 19th century, but we are interested in women in Rochester in the 20th century and in the 21st century, and women who have sort of picked up Susan B. Anthony's mantle and who are doing the work that needs to be done even now. And so as part of that push here in the department, we commissioned a work from Brittney Williams. We hope to have it on display permanently in the department or somewhere else in the library. It was going to be part of the exhibit, but it's a piece that's now part of our collections. You can see it here. Wonderful, represents young women of today who are picking up that mantle and moving Rochester forward. And so we were really thrilled that she accepted the commission, and we're really thrilled with the piece, and we're very excited to see where our collections and where the people who come in to do research with our collections takes us going forward. So that wraps it up for me. And just want to say thank you so much for having me here today. And I want to invite Eleanor Leno to come back on screen. And I think she has some questions for me. I have some questions for her, and we will, have a great conversation. Hi, Eleanor.
Hi, Autumn. Thanks so much for having me. So first off, we have 304 participants, which is absolutely insane. That's a lot of people. But to begin, I loved hearing about the exhibit, and it was very disappointing to hear that we're not having it anymore. So I wanted to ask you, first off, what were you most excited to show in the exhibition?
That's a great question. I was really excited to show some individual items that hadn't really been shown before. I mentioned those suffrage cookbooks, but we have a copy of the first suffrage cookbook ever produced. And so it's wonderful just to see the networks of women that were coming together to produce these books, because women from across the country, the West Coast, the South, the East Coast, all contributed recipes. And so that was, and it was a fundraiser too, just like, cookbooks are now. And so it was great just to see, to be able to share individual items like that. Because they're cool, they're wonderful, and I get to see them, but we don't always get to share them with the general public.
That's very cool. And collections like that show so much more than on the surface, like just a cookbook.
Yeah.
So I have one more question for myself, and then I'm seeing that we're getting a lot of audience questions, which is wonderful. But my personal question is, a couple years back, I did a research paper on Rachel Foster Avery and Susan B. Anthony, and I noticed there was a huge discrepancy between Susan B. Anthony's public persona as this kind of strict suffrage woman and the way that she treated her younger colleagues, especially with children, like Rachel Foster Avery and people like that. So my question is, what do our collections reveal about women who are in the public eye, how they're perceived by their close friends and family versus the public?
That's a great question. I would say that women in the suffrage movement were really aware of their public image because they were already part of a movement that was not popularly supported. And so they really felt a lot of pressure to maintain a very professional public image. And so, you couldn't go out and walk down the street or give a talk without being put together, dressed really presentably. And so they wanted to be taken seriously. And I think that they felt that they needed to present themselves as serious women. And, Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, the other women had close friendships. They had younger colleagues that they were close to. Elizabeth Cady Stanton had children and grandchildren and nieces and nephews. And so, they were caring and empathetic. They were mentors. They were all of these things. But I think that they did feel this pressure to really kind of tamp down on some of that publicly, so that they would be taken seriously as activists.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, so
I have a question for you, Eleanor.
Yes, what is it, Autumn?
Could you, so you're a docent at the Susan B. Anthony House, and could you tell me maybe about an experience that you've had there, either with someone who was visiting or a conversation with another docent that was, interesting or meaningful to you in some way?
Absolutely. So I think probably one of the most meaningful conversations I've had was about Black women's involvement with the movement, because growing up in a predominantly white high school and school district, I was never educated on Black suffragists. I wasn't even really aware of Harriet Tubman's involvement or people like having a bit of a but I wasn't educated well enough on that. And so I've had quite a few conversations at the Susan B. Anthony House that have really opened my eyes to how Black women were involved, but also how much they were silenced during that movement, and how centered that was on white women.
Yeah.
So I have a question from the public, because we are getting quite a few.
Okay, great.
But this is from Martha. She was the first person to submit questions. She is curious about, how does the U of R recognize Susan B. Anthony today? And also, and this is a really interesting question that I've talked with Susan B. Anthony House people about, but why is her name associated with the Right to Life groups?
Okay, so the first question, Susan B. Anthony, I feel like, is pretty prevalent on campus. There's a residence hall here named after her. There's an institute and a center. And then we have her papers here. And so I would say that, there's programming like this, and we've had other programming in the department. So I think that she is fairly well represented on campus, which, is only fitting because she worked really hard to ensure that women could be admitted to the University of Rochester. So we owe her a lot here. So that's great. And then with the Right to Life group, I'm not 100% certain, but I think that they cite a quote from her from I think it's either one of her books or one of her speeches, and they use that as kind of determine that she was took a pro-life stance in her work. I think that she's such a well-known person that no matter what your beliefs are, having a name like that that's so well-known kind of attached to it is a way of getting, helping people take the group or the idea seriously. So, yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And so this is from Deborah, class of 1974. But why did the 19th Amendment not guarantee all women the right to vote?
So that's a great question. On paper, it guaranteed women the right to vote, but it didn't prevent states from creating things like poll taxes or literacy tests that had also been put into place after African-American men were granted the right to vote back after the Civil War. And so on paper, it was supposed to make everything equal, but it didn't prevent states from taking those additional measures. So that's really why. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm actually seeing multiple questions about people being disappointed about the exhibit not running, which is, I too am extremely disappointed. But they're wondering if it will be available in any capacity online.
Yes, and I'm so glad they're asking. My colleague, Jessica, who is our exhibits manager, has been and is continuing to work on a digital version of the exhibit. So I can't say for sure when it's coming out, but I don't think it will be too much longer. I know she's been very hard at work on it, and I think it's going to look fantastic. Just because we had some really wonderful visual material in the exhibit, and I think that will translate well to an online exhibit.
Wonderful. That's so exciting. That's great to hear. So this is from Melinda, our good friend, but she wants to know, what are one or two of your favorite items in the Suffrage collection?
Oh my gosh.
Hard question. I don't know if I could answer that.
Well, I love letters from Susan B. Anthony because she has terrible handwriting and she doesn't care. She is a busy woman. She has things to say. She has things to do. She has a lot of letters to get out. So you just feel the urgency when you look at her handwriting, and how she just had this incredible laser focus on the matter at hand. So dealing with finances, dealing with multiple organizations, national campaigns, she's sending so many letters and receiving so many letters, and that she can keep track of it, and just kind of really just focus the letters on what she needs. She just seems to be so on top of things. And then anything visual, anything beautiful, the suffrage flag that was in my presentation that we have hanging in the department, very simple, just those three colors, white, yellow, and purple. But just to think of something like that was, maybe in a parade or in a march here in Rochester is just, yeah, it's exciting.
It gives me the tingles. I think there's a word for when you're in a museum and you see something and you feel this, I can't remember the word, but I always feel that way. So I'm seeing quite a few questions about, once again, Susan B. Anthony's involvement with the university. And so I'm under the impression that people want to hear the story of how she got women the right to attend the university. Somebody said, when I was a student in the 2010s, we were told that Susan sold her life insurance policy to pay for U of R's first female dorms. Yes. Is there any truth to this, or just nerdy Rochester history, Gus?
So she lobbied the board of trustees of the University of Rochester to admit women. And they told her that she would need to raise I'm hoping I'm not getting this wrong. I think it's $30,000, which was a substantial amount of money.
I think it might have been 50.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I think
So
it may
even
have been.
more. And if she could raise that much money, that they would admit women. And so she was kind of a tireless fundraiser, and she had certain women she knew she could go to. And you had a lot of women who were donating just $1 or $2. And then to get across the finish line, to get the amount that she needed, she did sell her life insurance policy. And so that money, those funds went to the university, and then they opened their doors to women. And she died just a few years after that. And female students at the University of Rochester dressed in white were then pallbearers at her funeral. So they were represented at the end of her life as well, which is great.
That's amazing. So this is actually about the collection specifically, but I'm seeing 2 related questions. So 2 people are wondering what parts of the collection are digitized so that we can access online during these pandemic times. And also, if some of these are digitized, are there any transcripts available? Because, you mentioned Susan B. Anthony had awful handwriting.
Yes.
Beautiful, but messy.
So 2 of the collections that I mentioned are digitized, and we have them up on our website. So the Isaac and Amy Post papers have been digitized. And we have some volunteers who have been transcribing those letters. And so I would say they're more than 50% done. And when you're on the website and you're looking at a letter, if you see you may see a transcript on the left-hand side. And again, it's more than half of them that have been transcribed. And then the Isabella Beecher Hooker collection, the suffrage letters from that collection. So the letters to and from Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, those are online as well as a digital collection. And I'm working with a group of volunteers right now who are transcribing them. So I would say we hope to have transcriptions up at some point for those letters. But if you were interested in looking at the letters and you didn't see a transcription, you could always contact us, and we could just send you via email a copy of the transcription so you could take a look at it. Some of the other collections, there are some other digitized material on our website, and then you can always email us and ask if there's something in particular that you're looking for. I know that, it's just, we have so many collections. Those are the 2 big ones that have been done. But there is other digitized material, and a lot of things are on our website, but we have some things too that might not be, that we might be able to share with you as well.
Wonderful. All right, so this is from an anonymous attendee, and we've only got about 5-6 minutes left, but it's a bit of a loaded question, but I think we should ask it. So how do you respond to accusations of racism in the suffrage movement?
That's a great question, and it's something that we do get asked here. I get asked here and at the Susan B. Anthony House. I think it depends on, the suffrage movement was a really broad movement. And so I think you have to think about, you have to acknowledge, first of all, that yes, some aspects of the suffrage movement were racist. There were a lot of women in the South who were in favor of suffrage, but who really, acknowledged that they were only in favor of it for white women. And I shouldn't even just say in the South, because it was an issue even up here in the North. So you have to think about the context of the times. You have to think about the specifics. Who is it? What state are they in? And I think you just also have to acknowledge that even women like Susan B. Anthony were willing to work with women who were racist in order to achieve their goals. And I think, some of them thought, okay, we're going to get the 19th Amendment passed, and then we're going to work on X, Y, or Z. And some of that then we're going to work on did not happen. And Gail, I invite you to comment here too if you have anything to say. So I don't like broad strokes across the entire movement, but absolutely we have to acknowledge that that individuals in the movement and parts of the movement were racist.
That's a great acknowledgement. So I just saw a really, really interesting question. from Alexandra. And she's saying that she recently visited Susan B. Anthony's grave and noticed that she had a very small headstone. So she asks, why does her grave not reflect the impact that she made while she was alive?
That's a great question. I think that, you know, she lived in a fairly simple house. If you've seen her house on Madison Street, it's a nice house, but it's not this huge, crazy mansion. She dressed nicely, but not in expensive fabrics or furs. And I think that she thought of herself, you know, individually as someone who wasn't really ostentatious or who needed big, kind of like a big memorial after she was gone. I think that she thought her work was the most important part of her life, and that would live on, and that's really what it was worth focusing on more than something like her grave.
And for people visiting Rochester, it's at Mount Hope Cemetery.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
I wonder also if it was her Protestant background as well that made her keep a more modest grave. So we're actually almost out of time. So Autumn, I'm wondering if you have any final remarks to give. And everyone, thank you so much again.
Thank you, Eleanor.
Of course.
I just want to close by saying, you know, thank you so much for being here today. Please do contact us. We really love our collections here. We're so proud of them, but for us, the joy comes in sharing them with other people. They're here to be used, whether you're part of the University of Rochester community or not. And so don't hesitate anytime to contact us with questions, image requests, anything like that. We really want to be able to share these riches with you. So thank you so much. And I'll turn it over to Gail.
Thanks. Thank you, both of you. This has been really a wonderful session. I know that we are all disappointed that we cannot see the exhibit, but I think the access online is terrific. And I'm also really thrilled that Louise Slaughter was included. I knew Louise and I greatly admire her. And so I'm thrilled that Louise was included in this exhibit. And I look forward to when we do this in the future, having the Women Running Rochester, that we also include our first female president of the University of Rochester, Sarah Mangelsdorf. So something to look forward to. Thank you all for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the program, and we'd like to hear your feedback. So please take a minute if you would, and at the end of the session, there'll be a request for a brief anonymous survey. The link for the survey will appear on your screen at the end, and select continue so that you can fill out the survey. Earlier, I mentioned to you my involvement with the Women's Network. You can see that on the screen right now. We encourage you to get involved if you're interested as an alum, friend of the university, and hope that you will do that. We are going to be establishing a new Meliora collective, which you can see there. It's a university's new digital platform. And Carolyn Tolbert, who's the Associate Director of Women's Initiatives, can also help connect you to our regional networks. As I mentioned earlier, we have them in New York City, in Washington, D.C., in Los Angeles, in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we're forming a new one for New England, which will be a couple of our alum in the Boston area are starting that now. And if you are in a city that I did not mention or in the area and would like to start one, we'd love to have you join us with this. So just send Carolyn Tolbert, whose email is on the screen right now, an email or give her a call. Please also join us next week on Thursday, August 20th for our next Experience Rochester. That's going to be at noon Eastern time. The topic will be Lessons of the Hour, Frederick Douglass, featuring the Memorial Art Gallery's Mary W. and Donald R. Clark director, Jonathan Binstock. The event will be a special pre-screening conversation about Lessons of the Hour, Frederick Douglass, a MAG commissioned work of media art by Isaac Julian. Will be a terrific Experience Rochester episode, so please join in next Thursday, August 20th. Have a great afternoon, everybody, and be well and stay healthy. Thanks.